Dear televiewers, good evening and thank you very much for joining us on another edition of Viewpoint on DBS Television. It is always a pleasure and thanks to the Divine One that we are here healthy and strong again to educate you, sensitize you and inform you on aspects going on in and out of Cameroon. But then our main focus is in Cameroon. In tonight's edition, we are going to be talking about the head of state package for the reconstruction of what happened in Ngarbuh in the Ndonga Mentung division, and of course we'll go a long way to find out whether this gesture is timely. To discuss about this, we are having as guest with us here in the studio a civil activist, Kimber Vitalis, always there. It is not the first time that we are receiving him. Good evening to you, Kimber Tata Vitalis, and thank you very much for coming again.
Good evening, Vanessa. Good evening, televiewers. It's my pleasure to be here once more to discuss about the things that are bothering our nation.
Mange Venashus, it is a pleasure having you as well.
Thank you, Vanessa.
Always.
The pleasure is mine to being there, and good evening to our viewers. It's time. Let us share issues affecting us as a country.
It is time. Let us share issues affecting us as a country, and given that the 14th of February is near, let us take the first part of the show. In the first question, government financial package to Ngarbuh for reconstruction, a timely gesture. Kimber Vitalis?
No.
No. Mange Venashus?
I think yes.
Yes. And does this have an impact on the crisis in the northwest and the southwest region as a whole?
No.
Kimber Vitalis says no. Mange Venashus?
I share the same opinion. No impact.
No impact. Let us have the debate. Government financial package to Ngarbuh for reconstruction, a timely gesture. Kimber Vitalis, we are talking of 80 million francs CFA to the victims of the February 14 Ngarbuh massacre, and the head of state package going there for the reconstruction as a whole. You think that the gesture is not timely? So when were you expecting this gesture to come up?
Good evening, Barrister. Good evening, televiewers. It is almost 1 year since these people were killed in Ngarbuh. And you have to know that human life is irrepressible. So when we talk about money being sent to the family for reconstruction and all the rest, are we saying that they are going to reconstruct the lives that were lost? No. So what I've always been saying, and I will continue to say, is that money cannot solve the problem that we have in the northwest and southwest. Money cannot solve the problem when an individual is killed, be it a military, an armed, or an innocent civilian. I wish to think that when these guys were killed, we had various statements from top military officials. Those statements were blaming the separatist fighters. Later on, when pressure came from international bodies and investigations were carried out, it was discovered that it was, let me say in quote, an error on the side of the military. I think it was the place of the government at that particular time to run to Ngarbuh, apologize to the bereaved family, apologize to the villagers, and see how they can comfort them. Bringing these aids 1 year after, I want to believe that some of the victims of the Ngarbuh incident, they might not still be in Ngarbuh, because it was a very terrifying incident. And for you to sit and see a family being wiped off from the surface of the earth, I think it was very traumatizing. So I don't believe that taking 80 million to them is going to solve any problem. Because, as I've earlier said, life is irreplaceable. You cannot replace a life. And if we keep on saying that we'll keep using money to solve problems, I don't think we are going to benefit anything.
But what of their farms, what of their animals that were being killed, what of their homes that were being destroyed?
Vanessa, I know one person that was the major victim. They call him Mr. Sika. Sika died, the wife died, and 8 children died. If you go now to Ngarbuh to go and replace his farms and his animal, you are giving those farms and animal and his houses. Who is going to enjoy those things? That is where the problem is coming from. The problem is not destroying and reconstructing. The problem is, how can we look for a lasting solution to this problem? Because if we say, okay, we are going to give 80 million in Ngarbuh, tomorrow we'll go to Maitu to give 80 million. Are we going to continue to share 80 million to each and every place where there is a problem? If reconstruction wants to come, it should be something general. It should not be like focusing only on Ngarbuh. I know it is not only Ngarbuh that have suffered because of this crisis. So if they want to start, if government wants to start reconstruction, it should be something that should be a general something. It should not like single out Ngarbuh and giving money out to Ngarbuh or to the victims of Ngarbuh. What about those who died in Pinyi? What about those who died in Mautu? What about those who died in Kumba? And so the list is very long. I think that 80 million francs that they have given cannot solve the problem of the people of Ngarbuh. And I also learned that there is a military base in Ngarbuh. Vanessa, I happen to have come from that area, and they always say that the military is your friend. But I want to tell you that anytime my people, they see the military, they are not comfortable. So going to construct a military base in Ngarbuh, and the people knew that it is the military that killed their people, I will not bring the people, the military, closer to them. I think it is only going to scare them the more. So the only thing that government would have done, apologize to these people, tell them we are sorry for what happened. Make sure that those who perpetrated this act are punished. Because see, today, the people are still in Yaoundé. We don't know whether...
apparently, I think they opened a case in December, which is still currently going on against those military men.
These are the type of cases that should be trashed immediately. You cannot come to give me money because they kill my brother or they kill my sister, and the person who killed my sister, you have not shown me how you have punished the person. No,
the process is still ongoing, and so we are hoping that at the end we'll
that is why we are saying, Vanessa, process. There are some process that we have to squeeze them and do them faster if we want to solve problems. We have many people who are still languishing in Kondenge today and other prisons all over national territory. If government wants to solve this problem, let them hasten up with the procedures so that we can now know that these are people who are innocent, you go away, people who are fully involved, who brought problems to this thing, they will be punished. Because going to Ngarbuh to give financial aid for reconstruction and the rest, I don't think the people of Ngarbuh, they might welcome it because they are desperate.
Okay.
But inwardly, I want to believe that they will not be happy, because happiness comes from within. Happiness is not money.
All right.
You cannot buy a soul with money. You cannot kill my children and give me 1 billion and expect me to be happy.
Thank you very much, Kimba Vitalis. You stay with us and you still hold your opinion while we get the point of view of Manke Finashus, who thinks that this gesture from the head of state is timely, assisting the people financially for reconstruction as a whole.
Yes, Vanessa, I think that it is timely because in English they say 2 wrongs can never be equal to 1 right. There was an error, which, at least perhaps for the first time, that we had the government accepting the fault that we are guilty. It came. Like you said, the procedure is ongoing. But the question we are asking is, they have died. What should we do? Remember, this is a government's own way of trying to, you know, to empathize, you know, go beyond sympathy, to empathize with the villagers. It's true, it might have taken long, but there is always a beginning to something. It is true that, like Mr. Kembang is saying, so many of them may no longer be there in, I mean, those who are related to the victims may no longer be in Ngarbuh at the moment, because the crisis has not ended. What killed their brother, their sister, their relation may still kill them. That is why they had to run out of the villages. It's true. But the thing is, when the findings of that commission were made public, and the government accepted that the military was responsible for the massacre, the head of state took the engagement that they will do this, they would do this, they would do this. It can take long, but they always say that government grinds slowly but steadily. It is a fact. Even if they ran to Ngarbuh the next day, they would not have brought back those Cameroonians. They had died. And if government is coming, Vanessa, remember that, like we are saying, the crisis is still ongoing, and the crisis is not only for the population only. It is a crisis that the government is struggling to live with, and it is not going. Remember, the government is confronted from many fronts. There are still other ways. They have died. That's a fact. But if, when you put the two on the scale, do we still take resources and divert them to that locality instead of trying to see if we can save souls for cases that we can still, you know, rescue their own situation? Every right-thinking person would say that, they have died, let us try to see if we can still save others from going the same way.
Preventing is better than cure.
Prevention at this point now. So I think that, remember, the government is being attacked from three fronts. We're talking about Boko Haram has not finished from the far north. We're having the incursion from the east region. The crisis is still, it's still, you know, getting from bad to worse. So if government, after trying to you know, handle all these situations, could still come back within a period of 1 year, it's long, yes. But I don't think that it is insignificant. When you listen to the governor of the northwest region, who was the bearer of the message of the package to Kamer subdivision, you know, he indicated to the people that the government has, or that the head of state had not forgotten them, had not forgotten their suffering. We know it is a trauma that some of them, especially relatives of the victims, would live with it throughout their lives. No matter what the government can give them, like Mr. Kembang is saying, will never wipe out the trauma from their minds. They will never bring back the people. But then, just the fact that after all this, government still comes back, it is a sign that government has not forgotten them. Government is still thinking that there was some injustice done somewhere in this part of the country. This is not the first massacre that we're having in this crisis. This was around the third or the fourth, because we had the one in Minka, in Pinyin, we had the one in Kumba, we had the other ones, the people were killed. But then, if government is coming up to this one, I think that it is another way of trying to, you know, share in their pains, share in their suffering. There is no other way of, even when we look at just like the recent accidents that happened in...
Or maybe is the I wish to know, is it because the government is aware that it's the military that, or they are certified that it is the military that carried out the act, that they are intervening, or what is actually located? I wanted to when I what is specific about Ngarbuh? When I listen because Kumba is likely it's not different.
Yes. When I listen to the message of the Northwest governor, you know, he was indicating that it is not because government is guilty. No, it is because the government wants to, you know, live with the people. The head of state wants to, you know, if you read what Cameroon Tribune wrote on that day, that is the condolences of the head of state. The condolences of the head of state to the
victims of Ngarbuh.
Correct. Families of the victims. Because when you have some other disasters that occur in Cameroon, look at what happened in, I was to cite the issue in Chang, the accident in Chang last time. The government decided to take care of the treatment of the and the burial of all this. It is not because the government government ministers have been going there. It is not because the government is guilty in this case. It is not. It was not the government that was involved in the accident or that caused the accident. It was an accident, and like a government who is there for the people, they have to sympathize with the people. They have to share in the suffering of the people. So that's why I think that it is not because this one had to do with the military or the military had to be involved in this. It is just like the one in Kumba. We've had people who have been visiting the victims of the children that were killed in Kumba. It is not because but
no commission of inquiry was set up to actually investigate who carried out the act.
If you listen to the head of state's message to the nation,
because now you cannot certify that
at the end of 2020, December 31st, he indicated that government will not relent in trying to find out, you know, the real causes or those who are responsible for this massacre and bring them to book. So we don't think that it has ended. Remember, government...
The issue of bringing people to book, that's where the problem comes from. You have to bring people to book. The only thing that can solve this crisis, that can help this nation, is that let's look for a lasting solution. If we say we'll continue to bring people to book, yes, we know that, yes, let's assume that most of the atrocities have been caused by Amber fighters. Okay, bring them to book. Where will you take them? That's the problem. No,
Amber fighters are Cameroonians.
Very good.
They are Cameroonian citizens. The fact that they have derailed from their duties and rights, it doesn't cancel them that they are not Cameroonians. And you listen to the head of state, he indicated that friendly nations who are housing those who are commanding these atrocities from abroad, they should renounce them, send them back home, so that they should face justice. There are many, areas. The International Court of Justice can come into it. They can still judge them, because when it comes to abuse of human rights, it is not limited within a geographical, location.
Although we are almost diverting, that's where the problem is coming from now. Because when you look at the human rights report, President Human Rights Report, they also accuse the military.
Of course.
Meaning that if international body have to come in, or International Court of Justice have to come in, heads will see role in the military and in the government.
On the condition, that the investigation proves that it is the military. Because if it happened in Ngarbuh, let us give the government the credit that if the military were responsible in Mauto, like it is coming up repeatedly, why would the government hide the one in Mauto? Because the government would have as well, if they wanted, hide the one in
well, you want
Ngarbuh.
them to identify themselves in every incident that takes place or happens within these two regions.
Vanessa, we cannot refuse the fact that we can have wayward element in the military as well. Because it is not to say that the government said, go and kill them. No.
No government can give an order that
they should go and kill citizens. That is it.
When people go, they take their own personal
and that is why they are responsible for those personal
and
initiatives.
The government is being blamed. My problem is that these type of people, like those who carried the action in Ngarbuh, the government did not say that go to Ngarbuh and kill people kill civilians. No government will say like that. That's what people are failing to understand. No military commander will say go to Ngarbuh and kill people. People go there with their evil minds and decided to carry out those acts.
Different orders.
So those people should be quickly judged and heavy sentences meted on them, so that other military people who are trying to do those type of things, they can also shy away from them. The one you drag the rope and take months or years to judge them.
All right, thank you very much, gentlemen.
The same thing is continuing.
In the second question, does this have an impact on the crisis going on in the northwest and the southwest regions? Kmer Vitali shooting at aiding these families of the victims of Ngarbuh will have no impact on the crisis.
Very sad. Let me laugh first, because we are not looking, if we are curing the consequences and not the cause, which means that we only continue to cure the consequences. But giving money out to the victims is curing the consequences.
The families of the victims.
Very good. And we are not, the cause, what is causing this thing? We have not looked for a lasting solution to it. And I want to plead with the government that the only thing, because it's not me saying it, the representative of the Pope was here the other day, and he said that once there is a conflict, the only thing that can bring about peace is genuine dialogue. A dialogue where I will enter and speak my mind and come out knowing that I've at least have spoken my mind. I've been following this thing. That's what do I call it? Peace and reconciliation
right.
in Gambia. And people come out and genuinely say what happened. They are forgiven. Forgive and forget. If Rwanda is where Rwanda is today, it's because they openly came out, dialogue, and say, okay, this is where our problem came from. We have realized our problems. We cannot tackle our problem. We cannot begin as a new nation, or we begin afresh. But if we are moving and curing the consequences, the causes will still continue. The crisis in the Northwest did not start because they did not compensate the people in Ngarbuh. No. Ngarbuh came in as a result of the crisis in the Northwest and Southwest. So even if they compensate the people of Ngarbuh, it is not only in Ngarbuh that people have been killed. Soldiers have been killed. We have widows who are the wives of soldiers. We have children who are orphans who are the children of soldiers. We have the ambas who have been killed. We have civilians who have been caught in the crossfire, and so on and so forth. So we should rather say, okay, how are we going to do to stop this through a genuine dialogue? People who want to, let's say, divide the nation, yes, come to the table. People who want that Cameroon should remain one and indivisible, come to the table. People who want federation, come to the table. People who want confederation, come to the table. You come and defend your cause. Give us the reasons why you want to separate the nation. Give us the reasons why you want us to stay together. Give us the reasons why you want us to be a confederation or a federation. From there, we are going to come to a compromise and say, okay, we adopt this form of state. We live with it. We forgive each other and we forge ahead. If we don't want to say certain things, we say, no, we don't want to hear about this.
No playing of the blame game anymore.
Yes. Because those who are suffering are the civilian. Some people are benefiting from this crisis very much.
A lot.
Yes. Some people are suffering while some people are benefiting. And some people don't want to speak the truth, to take the head of state what is really happening. Go to your people, explain to the people, explain the importance of peace to people. When I speak, most of the time, I refer to my constituency in Dongamanto. Why do we have peace in Camer? It is simple. We have passed that era in Camer of blame games, where you write petition against A write petition against B write petition against C. No. If you look at the new bit of politicians that we have in Camer today, they work in synergy, going in for peace and development.
Spearheaded by Honorable Ngalature.
Yes. That is why the youths haven't seen a future in what those guys are doing. They said, no, instead of destroying our nation, let us join them in building our division. But there are some of these politicians who will not use this wisdom. They want to use force. When you go to Camer, when Honorable Ngalajira is going to Camer, he does not force people to come out and welcome him. It is the joy that people have. The people look at what he has done to them, and he's still doing to them. That makes them to come and welcome him. And these are the type of people that we can use to bring about the end of this crisis, because they might be young in age, but you have some wisdom that they can use to calm down this crisis. So that is the only thing. The only thing we can do is that we look for a lasting solution to this crisis. We run to Ngarbuh and give 80 million. We run to Maito and give money. We run to Mbengwe, Kumba, and the rest. At the end of it all, the problem will still be there.
Thank you very much, Kmer Vitalis. Mange Venashus equally think that this compensation in Ngarbuh will not have any impact on the crisis.
Yes, Vanessa, because if they were killed, if they were going to compensate them so that the crisis should end, I will understand it from that point. But the compensation is because they were killed. And in as much as they are compensating them today, others are being killed somewhere. Tomorrow, we will still go and compensate them, and the crisis will keep going. So I think that if we want to stop the idea of compensation, we instead stop the crisis. If we stop the crisis, they say when you heal from the root, that is, you have cut the cause, there will be no effect. If we heal from the root, healing from the root is what caused the killing of these people in Ngarbuh, the crisis. How can we stop the crisis? If we stop the crisis, it means we may not have any future Ngarbuh. So I think that let us go first to the trying to see how we can remedy a worse situation, because the situation is no longer for 5 years now. We are still into the game of this one is wrong, this one is right, and the country keeps going to where it is. So I think that if we have to, because to me, like I was saying, if the government even did not go to Ngarbuh and solved the crisis, if the government did not go to Ngarbuh with the 80 million but solved the crisis, that would have been more, because they would have saved more lives than those that were lost in Ngarbuh, because we don't know for how long, how many other people will still be killed alongside this. The ones in Ngarbuh, they have died, they have gone. So let us stop others from going the same way. Let's stop others from suffering the same fate. And by so doing, it means if we solve the crisis, we would have saved a whole lot of people.
We are counting more than 3,000 people that have died. And we are going to compensate 22 people that died out of the 3,000. Okay. What about the rest of the people? All right. That's a question that we should ask ourselves.
What about the rest of the people? So, yes. Mange Venashus, what is the way out? What is the way forward?
The way forward is, whatever the situation, even between you and your wife, between you and your family, you always need to come together on a joint table and sort out your differences. How can we sort out our differences? Through dialogue, an inclusive dialogue, not a dialogue teleguided from somewhere, Vanessa.
Thank you very much, Mange Venashus. Kmer Vitalis.
Yes, the only thing is that the final thing that we can do is that let's have an inclusive dialogue. Because even if you beat your child in the house, continue beating Junior, continue beating all the rest of children, at the end you will still call him to say no.
This is
yes, to talk with him as your child, because force cannot bring peace. Peace comes from within, and it's only from within that we can have peace and live in harmony. Thank you very much, gentlemen. Kmer Vitalis, a civil society activist, for coming. Thank you very much. Thank you, and Mange Venashus, hope to have you tomorrow.
No, we'll be there.
Ladies and gentlemen, we've come to the end of today's edition. The corpses of these victims are still to be exhumed and buried properly as promised, but then other fulfillments have gone through. That said, do stay tuned to DBS television, and thanks to the team that made it possible for us to have today's edition, our cameramen, to the producers, to the sound technicians, to all of you. You're doing a great job. Thank you.
Coronavirus is not an imagination or an invention. It is a real threat that spares no one. We are already counting so many casualties the world over. The situation is serious, and we individually have the choice to scrupulously respect prescribed norms to preserve lives or die by mortgaging the lives of others. Therefore, our responsibility is strongly solicited in rigor and discipline. To stay safe, we need to regularly wash hands with soap, cough or sneeze on the elbow or on a handkerchief, use a disposable tissue, greet each other without shaking hands, and avoid embracing, avoid close contact, or better still, respect the 1.5 meter distance from others. Stay at home, and above all, voluntarily self-isolate and consult medical personnel in case of cough, flu, or fever. Together, responsibly, we will defeat coronavirus.
evening, dear televiewers. You are watching the news on DBS television. In our top stories for tonight, Cameroon's president is expected to give an annual televised address to the young people of the country in prelude to 11 February celebrations. Cameroonian youth prior to the speech have a number of expectations which we gathered and will share with you in this newscast. Still in today's news, we look at some daily preoccupations that young Cameroonians in the city of Douala go through, which they hope would also be looked at during this year's presidential address. Ladies and gentlemen, those were our top stories. Details in a moment. Welcome back. This is the 7 p.m. newscast in the English language with me, Cynthia Ngwemo. In our news today, President Paul Biya is expected to address young Cameroonians this Wednesday, February 10, in prelude to 11 February, which is the National Youth Day. Young people in the nation's capital are hoping that he addresses some of the burning issues that are affecting them on a daily basis. Amongst them is the socio-economic problems plaguing some regions of the country. Now let's get some of the expectations as compiled for us by Ate Bonaventure.
Despite their demographic advantage, youths in Cameroon still face a number of challenges that include unemployment, poverty, and lack of access to basic social security services, just to name but these. Expectations are high as they await President Paul Biya's message this Wednesday.
I want for my head of state to speak for the employment of youth, to resolve the Anglophone crisis and other many problems of our countries.
While many praise some of the measures for youth empowerment, others think some of the policies announced in previous messages are still to be felt.
The people, his collaborators that are working with him are not giving him the correct information about the suffering of the youth. So I want to play it on the head of state to really go into the deepness of our suffering, and if he can change his speech tomorrow, I'll be surprised.
Juvenile delinquency, violence, extremism, and moral decadence are some of the ills that need to be addressed. This applicant says she wants the government to create centers that will train youths on responsible sexuality and morals. Over the years, the government has been focusing on developing and implementing specific programs aimed at providing concrete solutions to the major preoccupations youth face in Cameroon. But there is divided opinion when it comes to comparing words with actions.
In the same line, just few hours to the National Youth Day celebrations in Cameroon, young people in the metropolitan city Douala are also expressing a number of preoccupations which affect them on a daily basis and which they hope would also be looked into. Now let's get the opinions and preoccupations with Vanessa Shuyo.
As the 55th edition of Youth Day approaches, one of the focal points being commemorated in this year's theme is the opportunities available for the young people during the COVID-19 period. In a country where the youth constitute a majority of the population, these young people are increasingly and consistently being sidelined from leadership positions, a move which many of them have been interpreting as alienating from the state. Talking to some of them, they highlight a number of preoccupations. To these young Cameroonians, their main concern is the lack of employment. Many of the youth have been forced by hardship, as he says, and have been making ends meet through commercial motorbike riding. Some of them are sufficiently educated, but their education has taken them to nowhere. Some are of the opinion that the government has invested very little on the youth. Looking at the huge investment carried out on sporting infrastructures, they would have rather had them on the youth so as to help them build a future. For those who can manage to have something doing, the minimum salary is too low that these young Cameroonians cannot depend on for survival. As such, many of them no longer look up to the government for a future. Taking it deeper, some point to such circumstances are said to have lured the youth in the two English-speaking regions to take arms against the government in a crisis that has lived on for more than 4 years. Revamping the economy, therefore, will be a means to appease young Cameroonians who no longer feel any sense of belonging and the need to participate in the national development of the country.
Members of the Electoral Council of Mongo Division in the Littoral region have met recently to assess the level of voter registration on the electoral list. The overall assessment, according to the head office boss, shows that there is an increase in voter turnout for registration ever since this year began. Details with Vanessa once again.
Despite the advent of the second variant of the coronavirus pandemic in Cameroon, members of the Electoral College of the Mongo Division did not fail to meet in Kongsamba to assess the level of registration on the electoral list. Since January 1, 2021, there has been a significant increase in the number of new voters, which stands at 715, says Adolphe Koule of Elekam. The overall list shows there are 449 men, 266 women and 572 youths respectively who have so far registered. Given they have to revise the electoral list, 3 names were corrected and 15 files were legally transferred, with 81 being rejected, including deaths and duplication of identities. Meeting in the City Hall with civil actors and representatives of political parties, they had a one-to-one talk to understand how a member of the Electoral Council will associate with Elekam officials to rig election results, says Professor Titinwell, member of the Electoral Council. He criticized the fact that Electoral Council members are good at organizing elections, but fail in observing them and coming out with objective, credible reports of their activities. Professor Titinwell equally questioned the philosophy of political parties in Cameroon, asking of what interest are they to the population. Meantime, registration into the electoral list and withdrawal of voters' card continues.
In the following feature report, Mange Venasius takes us through the exploitation of gold manually in Kolomine, a locality in the Ngura subdivision of the East region of Cameroon. Though it is carried out locally, it is a source of livelihood for the people. Mange Venasius with that story.
This is Kolomine, a locality in Ngura subdivision in the East region of Cameroon. Here, there are large reserves of gold buried beneath the soil. This natural endowment has been considered as manna for the local inhabitants, for this has been a source of income for them through which they can meet their needs by exploring the precious metal. This is done locally with the use of rudimentary tools such as diggers to create gold mines, water pump to extract water from the holes, a shovel to carry away the soil, and grinding mills to crush the granules collected. They are later collected in bags, and the mixture, as these excavators explained, is then washed with water so as to separate the earth from the precious metal. This is ready to be sold, and this is gold.
In news out of Cameroon, the Prime Minister of Sudan, Abdallah Hamdok, has announced a cabinet reshuffle in which he has appointed a number of ex-rebel commanders into the government. There are altogether 7 former rebel chiefs appointed as ministers on Monday, following a peace deal signed in October aimed at ending decades of war. Amongst them was veteran rebel leader and economist Jibril Ibrahim, who played a major role in the Darfur conflict. He was appointed as finance minister. Prime Minister Hamdok dissolved the previous cabinet on Sunday to form a more inclusive government since the previous power-sharing government between civilians and the military after the removal of Omar el-Bashir had been an uneasy one. In South Africa, the distribution or the vaccination campaign of the AstraZeneca vaccine had been suspended, it was due to begin this February. The suspension announcement on Sunday comes after a clinical trial suggested that the vaccine isn't effective in preventing mild to moderate illness from the coronavirus variant, which is dominant in the country. South Africa had received 1 million doses of the AstraZeneca vaccine, with which it had planned to start vaccinating frontline healthcare workers from mid-February. The country's government says it will start by using other vaccines in the meantime, while AstraZeneca said it was developing another vaccine that would be more effective against the South African variant, which could be expected by September. That is what we gathered for you on today's edition of the news in the English language with me, Cynthia Ngwemo. Thank you for staying with us. See you tomorrow. For now, good night.
Coronavirus is not an imagination.